I didn't even give you the opportunity to say one thing.
We're 45 minutes into this.
All right, let's see. Voice, microphone, lighting, check, lights, camera, action, as my wife says. Here we go. Welcome to Be Insanely Great. Super excited to be starting today. I have never in my life would have dreamed that I would be doing something like this, but yet here we are, pushed by several sparks of inspiration along my journey and in my life. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be here and share some things that have changed my life over the past now 7-8 months, somewhere around there, and see how we all can potentially learn from it, maybe, if we're interested. If not, that's cool too. You can, everybody does them, right? And so, but for some of the things that I've experienced, I think it's just like, there's no reason to me that I'm some special person that this can't be for everyone, right? And so I've gone through, I started this. Let me back up. So in terms of who is this guy? My name is Joe, by the way. So Joe, nice to meet you. And I started this, I'll call it a journey. I didn't even know it was a journey when it started. But about 7-8 months ago, I was in a place of kind of not really knowing who I was, not really knowing what I wanted to do in my life. And I was grateful to at least have the awareness to have that realization and realize I was living in every moment in reactionary mode. Like I was reacting to everything around me. And that was just kind of the observation. All right, well, reactionary, is that even a thing? Like, what is that, right? Is that a mindset? Is that just even like a documented thing that someone's identified in terms of like the human psyche and mindset? And so, did a little Googling. Our good friend Google, who solves most of our problems these days, or gives us insight into things we wouldn't have had, and stumbled upon a few different articles, realized that, all right, maybe it is, whether it's a thing that somebody called clinically or not, I wasn't trying to get there. I was just trying to see, how do I get out of it, right? And so for what I was doing in that time, I stumbled upon this thing called abundance. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. It sounds like it could be the opposite, maybe, based on what it says. So let me take a stab at that and see what I can do. Got into trying to see what is a mindset. I never, even before this, really understood what even a mindset was. Like, is that, and I was not aware to it. It was not a thing that I had any kind of insight into. And so, and then of course, mindsets, and then kind of, how do you do that, right? I have a friend of mine who, I was planning on having a conversation with that weekend, and I know I would have told him about this and we would have talked about it, and he would have said, well, so what are you doing to get into that mindset, if that's really even a thing? And I'm like, well, I know he's going to ask the question, so let me try something. And then I found a meditation, and self-admittedly, I would not be that person in the corner. This same person I was going to have the conversation with 3 years prior had told me, I tried this transcendental meditation. It was pretty awesome. And I said, that's great. Good for you. But I can never be that person to sit in a corner quietly for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, much less 3 seconds, right? So I always had to be doing something, and always had to be moving. And if I wasn't moving, then nothing was happening, and I wasn't achieving anything, and it wasn't productive, right? And so I got into this awareness of, okay, let me try this out. I don't know what it is, but I'm thankful to have some time on my hands to try and do that. And so it took me 3 days of procrastinating to get to a day in the middle of the afternoon in which I said, all right, now I'm going to do it. I got 20 minutes. I'm going to go for it. So I got this free meditation that was 20 minutes with abundance by Bob Proctor. And it was super soothing. It was beach waves and him speaking in his voice, and just kind of trying to put me into a different place. And I fully tried to embrace it with every element of my being. To my surprise, at the end of 20 minutes, my entire body was kind of vibrating like someone had plucked a tuning fork. And I was like, whoa, this is incredible. What is this? I don't even know. But it feels like a feeling and a sensation I've never had before. And so then I said, all right, well, I don't know exactly what that is, but then I would say, let me try it again the next day. And so I tried it again the next day. And the same thing happened. And I was like, what is this? And so I started kind of getting into trying to figure out, like, what is this? Is this a thing? Is this what happens with everybody with meditation? Again, went back to my good friend Google, and no one seems to have had something that they shared was like this. But that being said, everybody's, it kind of helped me qualify that everybody's experience is different and everybody's going to have a different experience, right? And so I think that is the overarching theme of that point. But even going further, I was questioning, what is this? What is this happening? Like with the meditation thing, it was, I was sitting there, I was in it, and I was getting these feelings, but I was still having these things race through my mind of all the things I'm stressed and anxious about and worried about and trying to get over and deal with in the day, and that we all have in our lives, right? And so it was really just a time to be without, in mindfulness mode. Thank you, Apple, for those settings for focus features. In mindfulness mode, trying to silence everything out and giving me an opportunity to be quiet and be still and be uninterrupted. But again, going back to my point, is like, what is this? What is this feeling? Like, is this real? Is there anything to this? Is there something that this could evolve into? And from there, I found an author and speaker and well-known figure in the world of trying to understand life, Joe Dispenza. Saw some of his videos on YouTube, and I'm like, all right, well, this guy's saying things like, to be in the present moment, you have to not think about the predictable future or the familiar past. And I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty insightful. Like, if you actually listen to it and apply it, right, and start catching yourself in little moments. And so I watched a few more videos, and then I was inspired enough to buy his book, which, so another full disclosure, like, I was not a reader. I had never, I never got into it. It was never anything that I enjoyed, even through school and growing up and becoming an adult. It was just never my thing. It was never anything I did. I despised having to do book reports over summer. I'm like, what teacher is so generous to have students, be forced to read who have no desire to do so? But, whatever. I was like, all right, let me take it one page at a time and go from there. And so all of my questions of being, I've always been very analytical. I've always been very, detail oriented. I've always been, show me the facts, show me the data. And every doubt or like suspicion or, anything that I had in my mind that was telling me this is nonsense was checked off with data and with facts and with science, whether it was through epigenetics or through quantum physics, and kind of the combination of that. And then Joe Dispenza, the way he so clearly articulates the connections between them and how they apply to life and how you can potentially use certain elements, right? And so he was a true inspiration for me in this journey. And then, what I went on from there was essentially getting to a place of, okay, I got through the book and he gives you he gives you some meditations to try. And I'm like, well, I like my 20-minute thing. Like, I just want to stick with that. Right. And then I'm like, all right, well, I want to keep that, but he's got these other things and let me try this. And one of the most impactful things that I learned on that kind of journey, after I started checking the box that this makes sense, there's science to back this up. Okay, I'm believing I have a foundation to build upon, that maybe there's something more here than I ever could have imagined or even thought about. And there was an exercise in the book, which the book that I read was Becoming Supernatural. Surprise, supernatural, it's possible. But not spoiler alert, right? I guess that's what you say these days. But anyways, one of the exercises in the book that was probably the most important lesson that I learned at this point was, I didn't know exactly what it was that I wanted. I thought I wanted happiness. I thought I didn't even know what happiness was. All I knew happiness or joy was when your team scored and, scored some touchdowns or won a game and you're happy, or it's your birthday and someone surprises you with something. The moments of happiness in my life to this point were extremely rare. I think as most of us, I mean, before this, I feel like everybody would always remember the bad things, but nobody remembered the good things. That's a saying that a lot of people say. Why does that have to be the case? And I didn't know any better. I didn't know any different. I didn't know that there was even another option. And so at that point, I was like, he was challenging, and he told this story about his son. His son graduated from college and wanted to get a job. And he said, well, put it down, think about what it is exactly that you want, and then meditate on it for, this meditation happened to be 40 minutes, which I'm sure some people are like, 40 minutes? What? I can't even do 20, much less 5. But, everybody has their own journey and everybody makes their own choices. And but these were my choices that I was making because I saw something in this, and I saw that this could potentially be something I didn't know, but I wanted to try it out. And so I went through and I thought about it, and it really challenged me because I was like, what is it exactly that I want out of what I'm trying to do? What's the next thing, right? What's the thing that looks like or sounds like or feels like what it is that I want to do, and put it down on paper, and then be consistent and focus on that. And as Joe Dispenza says, where you put your attention is where you put your energy, right? And so I did that. And the other huge lesson that I got in reading his book, it was probably before this part, so forgive me in terms of the recollection of sequence of events, but it was to eliminate. So to that same point, where you put your attention is where you put your energy. So notifications, emails, phone interruptions, news, literally everything outside of my own world with that I spend any time on thinking, I eliminated. So anything that was, which essentially eliminated everything that was out of my control. This guy was traded to this team in the NFL, a couple of years ago. Oh my God, that's amazing, or not. And then you talk about it. But now, I don't have any connection to it, because to me, it just made sense that where you were putting your attention, where you were putting your energy, and it was sucking your energy. It was sucking it away, and it was consuming it. And then his whole point was bring your energy back to you. You have this energy. You're giving it out to all of these things and all of these places and all of these people and all of these things in your life. And I'm like, wow, that makes real sense. So let me try it. I mean, I don't have anything to lose except for, I lose the beat on what's happening in the world. But, at that time, I'm like, all right, whatever. And that was 7 months ago, and I haven't looked back. I'll tell you what, that was probably the best decision I've ever made in my life, was to recenter every element of attention that I had and kind of start from zero. Like, okay, if I came into this world without any societal constructs, influences on my own mind or imagination or thoughts or feelings, what we don't know any different except for what's around us and what we see and what we hear and what people tell us and what we believe and what we feel and what we think. And so it just made sense. And so those were two really amazing things that helped me. And I continued to progress, and I did my best to be disciplined. Some days, I think I went 20 or 30 days in a row doing the 20-minute, then doing the 40-minute. And then I was just going. And then I was like, man, it's kind of getting a little old. And plus some of my time, some things kept creeping in depending on my life. Right. So, and we all have this, we all have things that go on in our life, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whatever it is, we got things that we got to do. Right. That's another thing we'll talk about. Thank you, Steve Harvey. Thank you so much, Steve Harvey, for the Instagram reel that I had seen, to which you said, why are we saying we got to do this, we got to do that? Why can't we just change one letter and that, and be like, we get to do this, we get to wake up and do this, we get to go here and do that. It's like every day becomes Christmas when you think of it that way. It's like, oh my God, you change the entire perspective. And it's an entirely new way of looking at things, in which you have a level of appreciation and gratitude, where instead of it's being forced upon you, nobody wants to do it. And then, of course, if it's forced upon you, you go in, you don't want to do it. And so what do you not do? You don't give it any love, because you don't want to be there in the first place. And I was doing the same thing. Who wouldn't do that? We all do that. Anything we have to do, it's hard to kind of get to a place of putting genuine intention and care into it, because we don't even want to be there in the first place. So, I digressed, and thank you again to Steve Harvey for that. And so for that spark of inspiration that gave me an alternative perspective on that point. But it was really, again, going forward. And so I removed everything from my life, removed all the distraction, everything that I was giving my energy to, I drew it back to me. I had figured out, or at least in the moment had said, all right, here's what I want in my life, or I think that I want. And it makes sense. And it's constructive. It's not some, it was all, I had kind of qualified myself. Like, is there anything selfish in here? Is there anything I'm asking for that's like just for me and from a selfish or selfless? I think sometimes too, we, at least from my observations, we want to be selfish in the sense that like we want to care about ourselves and we want to take care of ourselves. But when it comes to speaking in terms of others, selfish actions and selfish thoughts and selfish feelings are the opposite of selfless. And to me, at least, selfless is a loving action. Selfless has a root of love. And when it's selfish, it's kind of the opposite of that. Right. And so, but again, I mean, those are things that everybody in their own journey needs to kind of realize, or at least gain awareness to. But for now, like I said, and I would say this was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 months in, I was doing this and had all this stuff kind of, I'd say figured out. We're always like, all right, well, I got it. It's done. In a day, I know what it is. I know what I got to do. Like, this is it. Right. I had no kind of conception, even in the beginning, that this would be kind of a journey that who knows what it could become like. And the reality is here I am 7-8 months later, like it's progressing every day. The feeling of joy, the feeling of love, the feeling of wholeness, the feeling of fullness. It's something that keeps growing and keeps building. And for me, at least in my journey, it's a constant focus on discipline. It's a constant focus to catch yourself. It's a constant focus to, we all think about, and for me, it's almost like protecting my thoughts and protecting my feelings. Prior to this, I was only concerned about protecting my things and protecting my possessions, right? And protect, like we lock our doors, we lock our houses, we buy insurance, we do all we worry about someone stealing our lunch out of the community refrigerator in the office, right? Like we worry about all of the things, but how many of us actually like are worried about the thoughts and the feelings that we have in the thousands of moments that we have throughout the day that we're putting our energy and attention toward, that most of the time we don't want any of that stuff. It's just there and we're just spending time on it because we don't believe that, or we don't have, maybe the better word is we haven't given ourselves the opportunity to potentially come into the awareness of like, we have a decision. We might have a choice. We might like just realize that's the constant and that's the typical. And it could vary. Like, why couldn't it be as simple as saying, well, I'll choose this. Well, and I'm sure there's people saying, well, you can't do that. Well, in the beginning, it's hard. And honestly, there's waves of things that come in that hit you over the face. Like I just had this happen to me this past 2 or 3 weeks where I've had things happen to me in my life that grounded me and have said, whoa, you think you're moving fast? Like, here you go. Here's a new challenge for you to overcome. Right. And so that's part of it. And that's at least from what I've experienced, part of trying to really reclaim your energy, and reclaiming what's possible in our life and reclaiming what in every moment we have the opportunity to make a choice for, and realizing that that's a thing. And it's unbelievable. It's truly, I mean, to me, has been inspirational. I would have never believed that, even whatever before this, that any of this is possible or where we are today. And so, it's really just kind of evolved into this thing of I keep trying to simplify it and I keep trying to go into different directions and pulling different things from here and there. So I'll fast forward through the Joe Dispenza elements. So those are the two main things I learned. Thank you, Joe Dispenza. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you and your team and everybody that has helped kind of put science behind things and explain things in such a clear and easy to understand way. And those were two real main lessons that I learned. then I stumbled upon this book by someone that I'm sure most everybody knows, Deepak Chopra. He wrote a book on abundance, and I'm like, what? Perfect. Let me check it out. And so again, another book that and by the way, Joe Dispenza's book is like, a mini phone book, is like 300 some odd pages. And I'm like, I was like, all right, one page at a time. Same thing with Deepak. Thank you so much, Deepak, for your super insightful book with many pages and many things. And so I went through and I started going through and I started reading about Dharma and karma and all of these things. And for me, at least in my own kind of perspective in looking at it, a lot of it was validation. I was reading things that I was feeling and things that have changed in my life. And it was really a validation that this meditation of abundance that I've been listening to for months, like it's essentially becoming myself and who I am now. And everything that he had so well written in there to say, all right, if you're, in Dharma, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing, and I'm like, check. And it was really, it was like a lot of validation. And at least since I've picked up reading again, it's usually one of two things that happen. And one of it is validation. Like, wow, this is like, you could be reading something that someone else like super impactful and influential had done, and you resonate with that. And you're like, oh my God, I do that same thing. Or I see where you're coming from. You know what I mean? And then the other thing is like, we learn something new when we apply it. One of the things that was really insightful from Deepak's abundance book was to focus on like light and the heart, and realizing that there's because a lot of what a lot of in the beginning, I was trying to figure it out and trying to figure out like, okay, if I'm focusing on nothing, that's really hard to focus on, right? Because that's what they tell you to do. And listen, I mean, I get it. Like, all right, the opposite of everything is nothing, right? So focus on nothing. But how do you actually do that? And how do you do it practically? And of course, everybody's going to have their own journey. But for me, I was like, all right, well, I'm sitting here quietly. Is it like, a smoke cloud? Is it like blackness? Is it like, I don't know what it is, but I'm trying. It kept changing. And then he helped me get that kind of vision of like, almost like a sun, or like brightness in the heart. And then having that, and then focusing that to go up to your, up to your brain, and then, back and forth. And it was really calming. And it started to be something that I did while I was driving, not with my eyes closed, but with my eyes open and full. And I was like, then all of a sudden, 45-minute drives became no problem because I was doing something productive along the way, and it was helping me. And it was like, and then I'd show up. And like, even now, plane rides. Oh my God, I got a 2-hour plane ride. That's great. That's 2 hours of time I can be quiet with myself and focus on, centering and meditating, and coming off the plane ride with the abundance of energy of like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. But then in doing that, and the reason I share that example is I started saying, well, what if I took like little things from here, little things from there that resonate with me, and then build my own kind of version of this? Right. And so kind of finding a way of realizing and understanding who I am and what it is that works for me based on my own life experiences, based on my own energy, based on my own disposition of things, and kind of pull those things and then build on those. Right. And so that was incredibly helpful. And again, it was almost like the pieces just kept falling into place, and I didn't realize it all at the time. But then it kind of went to another level when I read Wayne Dyer's book, Wishes Fulfilled, which again, Wayne Dyer, he passed away several years ago, but he was quite an inspiration to many people for many decades. He really kind of had like such insightful, motivating elements to the things that he said, and it was so clear, and it just resonated with me. And it's almost like it feels like what resonates with any one of us, but whether it's among us or whether it's things we hear or things that are said or songs we hear, it's like we're on the same frequency as that. Right. And we connect with that. And so, the biggest thing that out of that book that I got was, first of all, it helped me kind of build upon what Joe Dispenza had helped me do, which is like really sit down and think about what it is that I want out of my life and what it is that I want out of every present moment, because that's really the key, is living in the present moment and not thinking about, using his words, the familiar past or the predictable future. It's like, even if you're in a random place and you say that to somebody, they're like, whoa, that's actually pretty cool. That's actually, that might, because and again, if that just instant like awareness to that is almost like we know that is truth. It's like we have an inner knowing of what's right and what's wrong, and we all, some will say yes or no to that, but I think a lot of us are truly grounded in that point, right? And so I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that from Wayne Dyer that what I learned is to just kind of take it to the next level and really just simplify the focus on being, and and then I started tying things together, and what Joe Dispenza had said, and he says all the time, is we're just light. Everything around us is light and information, right? And so my interpretation of that is like, all right, so like everything that we see and everything that we are is the light, and the information, maybe it comes from our consciousness. Maybe it comes from us. Maybe we're the ones that are, have the ability to do something. And so, it really just kind of took off and became this thing in which every time I meet someone, I don't know if this is something from the meditation where, every I don't know, he says every person you interact with feels better having come in contact with you. Why not? Like every time I meet someone, I have the energy of, how are you today? So good to meet you. What's your name? Just even asking somebody's name. Nobody asks for anybody's name anymore. They just like, oh, okay, bye. Thanks. Barely, right? But why not? I whether I was at a rental car place in New Jersey a few weeks ago, and these super people, thank you so much, Marilyn, for helping me find a great car. Jose checking me out, being able to go through we're all people. We're all human beings. And the simple gesture of being able, first of all, to have the energy to be able to do that. I'd never done anything like that before, ever, never. I would always be the shyest kid on the playground. I'd barely even want to say a word, much less, ask their name and try and have a brief, 15 seconds of engaging conversation, and then they say, where'd you get that energy? I'm like, I don't know. I'm working on figuring it out. Let's figure it out together. So I'm like, it's all in us. We all have it. And I feel that. I feel that in my heart. I feel that in my soul, that we all have this. And, people say, well, what do you like? What is this? I said, well, I saw my friends from college a few weeks ago on the Super Bowl. They said, what are you on? And I said, life. I am on the energy of life. I am on life. And then I said, the best analogy I can give, kudos to my colleague Anton, who's the king of analogies, this great Scotsman. And he's like, the analogy that I can give is I feel like I have the awareness of an adult, but the energy of a child. And it's like, wow, oh, and here we go. Two beautiful doves flying by. So if you hear, birds flapping, and that's another thing, like birds are all around, animals come around, things are happening, things happen in sequence, things happen in order. It's like people texting you when they say, oh, I was just thinking about you, or all that stuff. Like that just keeps happening more and more frequently. I don't know about anybody else, but that would be a rare occasion for me. And when it's happening like on a daily basis and it keeps continuing its momentum, it's like something's happening out there. And so, and then, so here we are, right? That's kind of the context of like things that I've read, things that I've seen, and helping understand that, coming to the realization that, what if we pulled little things here, little things there, little things here, and had that be something that we resonate with and that we accept as truth? And that what if we then, with that understanding and realization and acceptance, believe in ourselves to then become what we resonate with, so that we don't have to think about it. We just act and operate in that way, right? And so like it could very well be, something like you read a quote, or you hear lyrics of a song, or you see all these things around you, and then again you realize it, you resonate with it, you have a good feeling about it, and then if you reflect, or we reflect on things, it's kind of, the pieces kind of fall into place, right? And so it really just has come into, and then that kind of parlays into the in the trailer, I talked about this universal intelligence and the Beatles and all this amazing, great stuff. And we're going to get into that here shortly. But it was really trying to say, okay, if there is this universal intelligence and that universal intelligence is so smart, why wouldn't that universal intelligence like put little specks of inspiration all over the place, right? And so like that, those are quotes, whether it's a quote from Oprah or a quote from like Aristotle or a quote from Leonardo da Vinci or a quote from Leonard Hamilton, the F1 race car driver, which I love a quote that he said. He says that my driving is an expression of my inner feelings, right? What? Like, what is so, okay. All right. Amazing. Like, okay, so you're connecting with your inner feelings and you are expressing that with how you drive your F1 race car down the road or wherever you call those things with F1 racing, hundreds of miles an hour, right? To be able to be the super champion you are. Oh my God, that is unbelievable. That is incredible, right? And then reading Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs says there's been things that he said that people have captured that said he ran Apple like the Beatles. He ran Apple like the Beatles with perfect harmony and with beautiful interactions, right? To keep the peace and to have love in everything that you do and to keep refining. Oh, and then also he said he valued the connection with your intuition and your inner knowing more than he did intelligence. Okay, so Leonard Hamilton, F1 race car driver, Steve Jobs, and Oprah has said similar things. And I'm sure I can go on and on and on, and I'm sure everybody listening has tons of examples themselves. So why isn't that something that we try? Why isn't that something that we explore? Why isn't that something that we give ourselves the opportunity to say, oh, that sounds great. Let me try that, right? But then we do it for one day and we're like, that shit don't work. That doesn't work. It didn't work for me. I tried it for a couple days. I tried it for a couple weeks. It doesn't work. Well, do you put a seed in the ground and expect a 30-foot oak tree tomorrow? No, it takes years. It takes effort. The Beatles didn't become the Beatles overnight. And if you watch the Get Back documentary or any element of anybody writing a song, most of the time they don't have the song perfect exactly in the moment, right? So what if we looked at everything, Riley, you said this resonated with you. What if we looked at everything in our lives as the baseline is perfection? What if the baseline was perfection, right? Everything around us, the trees growing, the birds singing, everything happening, the oceans, everything moving around. No planets are blowing up in front of us. We're here. We're in the present moment. The sun is shining today in this beautiful day, right? So why can't perfection be the baseline in every moment? We're giving ourselves the opportunity to improve upon that. And if there's ever a perfect example of it, it's documented very clearly in the, thank you, Peter Jackson, I think that's his name, for your eloquence and giving us whatever it is, 7 or 8 hours, which I really want to see all 60 hours at some point. So I'll give you my address on a later private episode. But seriously, seeing the evolution and finding it, right? So Paul McCartney on his book of lyrics, he says, writing a song is unlike anything I know. He's like, you have to be in the right mind. You have to be in the right mind. You have to be in the right mood. You have to have a clear mind, and you must trust your initial feelings, because in the beginning, you don't really know where you're going. So there's another example, which I don't know why I didn't remember in the moment, but you got Leonard Hamilton, you got Paul McCartney, you got Steve Jobs, all these people that we idolize, these people that we're like, oh my God, who are you? You are this amazing person in our society, right? And there's quotes out there that say we idolize these people because they're like the greatest expression of what's possible for humanity, right? So if we think about that for a moment, so whether they're an athlete, whether they're a scientist, whether they're a business person, or whether there's someone in your life that you just they've been so impactful on your life and they've done so many things for you, or anything. It's like we're seeing an example of what's possible, and it's almost like a limit. It's almost like we're these people have pushed the limit, right? We know what the limit is. These people have gone beyond that limit. They've created their own limit. There's no limit for them, right? And so how can we think about that and potentially apply it to our lives, right? And for me, the biggest decision I ever made was to start applying things in my life and to start, even though I had the opportunity and again, I'm so grateful to have had the awareness to reflect on things as to how decisions and choices that I had made. But like, if we don't apply it, right? We read all these quotes. They're all great. We all resonate them. We hear these songs that seem like, they make us happy. They make us joyful. But how many of us actually look at the words and actually think, oh, maybe I can this sounds good, but have I applied this in my life? Right. And is it something that what would happen if we did that? I mean, I never gave myself the chance until recently, and I can tell you it's worth it. We all got to give it a shot, but at least for me, it was worth it. And I think that that's something that they're all right in front of us. There's so many things that are right in front of us that we almost miss it because we're always going to the next thing. We're always trying to look for the next thing. We're always looking, where are we going? All right, we got here. Oh, we barely got here. We got to go. We got to be ready to go there, right? Whether it's in business or whether it's in our personal lives. I was absolutely guilty of that. I was never, that's per my example of I can't even meditate, right? I wasn't even able to sit down for 3 minutes, much less 20 or an hour. And here I am trying to speak about a journey, right? And I was trying to go to the next place all the time. That's all I was doing. And it was really grounding in a sense to be able to just have the awareness that, all right, we can be here. And then that ties to the present moment thing, right? So if we're not running to the next thing and we're not always thinking about the next thing, which is Joe Dispenza's The Predictable Future, right? Like, okay, then give ourselves an opportunity to be present. And oh my God, like the things that I pay attention to now, new buds on plants that are, flowering, birds that are flying by, birds that are chirping, butterflies, grass that's growing, all of these things that I was only looking for the imperfections. I was like, oh, this is dead over here, or this doesn't look good, or, this isn't good. And going back to the, baseline of perfection, why not? Like, again, we have so many things that we're always worried about in our lives. Like, if we say, all right, everything's perfect, let's build on it. It's almost like giving ourselves credit to be able to just be free for a moment, right? And instead of chasing perfection, it's already here. What if it's already here? And you know what? Anybody that says, oh, that's not true, well, listen. Good. Everybody has their own choice. Everybody has their own opinion. But while you're over there trying to prove me wrong or prove anybody wrong that makes a decision to give something like that a try or anything in their life, I'll be over here doing my thing, having a great time, living life, trying to find the joy in things instead of thinking about the things that come up, which, the negative things, the anxious things, the stressful things, they happen. They come up. Right. And every one of them. And I've had one of probably the biggest lessons of my journey these past, several weeks, which I almost decided to cancel this show. But I said, you know what? If I'm really doing this and I'm really showing what's real in the present moment, I can't be just canceling the show because I feel like something happened to me in my life today. And if I'm in the present moment, well, then I'm not worrying about that stuff that's bothering me. And, how can I sit here and say that and be that person? Right. And so I'm like, all right, let me pull my bootstraps up and let me come here and be here with you today and kick off our show that's about being insanely great in every moment and giving ourselves the opportunity to do that and giving ourselves credit for who we are and making progress. And we're going to have good days and we're going to have bad days and we're going to have the opportunity to have experiences to which in every one of those, we can either look at something that we want to challenge and argue and fight against or force a result that we think that we want to exude an element of control, or we can let it be and just go with the flow, right? I mean, one of the best examples of going with the flow, I'll reference again the Get Back documentary. These guys, the things that came up, whether it was a location, whether it was a song, whether it was George leaving the group, I mean, they were like, You know, like they expressed their thoughts, but they didn't get upset. They didn't get angry. They stayed in the present moment and they let things flow. And and looking at examples there, and again, and quoting Joe Dispenza, is how you think and how you feel creates your personal reality, and thus your personality, right? And so it's like, all right, so if it really is, and again, going back to the light and information thing, right? So in manifesting that, or whatever it is you want to call it, if how you think and how you feel, if it's really that simple, well, my God, how do you do that? How do you do that? Like, how do you, well, so number one, for me, at least, I had to have awareness. All right, well, like, if that's really true, then literally every thought I think and every feeling I feel, which Joe Dispenza helps understand that the body, the feeling, the emotions are stored in the body, right? And our thoughts are here. And so you can't, it's almost like, and what I learned is you can't just think about something, you got to feel it. You got to have that positive feeling, right? And I don't know if it's my own personal reality, but the Ted Lasso episode that just aired the other day, I mean, episode 2, oh my God. Like, if you want to talk about thinking and feeling and believing and having something come to fruition, and a program that helps explain the most clear, eloquent example of that, oh my God. Like, we could save that for another episode. But seriously, wow. Thank you so much, group of Ted Lasso, for giving the world some television programs that are centered around joy and love and positive feelings, and not, everything else that we consume our thoughts with in this world. Lewis Hamilton, I think I accidentally said Leonard earlier. Lewis Hamilton, there we go. That's episode 1, and maybe that's episode 2. And if we're doing a preview for episode 2, come back next week and we'll be here for episode 2. Thank you so much for joining and watching this insanely great opportunity we have to build something together and figure out what this is. That is life. Figure out what this is. That is feeling of positive joy.